Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in to our channel. My name is Mary. I'm from Silmy Law, and I'm very happy to have a quick chat with everybody today. And of course, I'm very proud to introduce our very own, the best, Attorney Sharif. Silmy, hi, Sharif.
Hi, Mary. How are you doing?
We're doing very well. Thank you.
Great, great. Thank you. It's always great to be together again and hopefully get some good information out there for folks to help them in their journeys, and so we could kind of share some timely information today, I hope.
Yes, and many of our friends, especially many of our Indian friends and clients, of course, they're very much interested and eager to hear what you have to say. So I'm sure you all can see. But just for the benefit of everybody, today we are talking about an urgent visa update. Of course, many people have been asking if Congress, where Congress is when it comes to the discussion of maybe abolishing country quotas. Attorney Sharif?
Yeah. So, I think that every year for the past several years, there has been an effort in Congress to introduce the Eagle Act, which is legislation to abolish the country quota that is the primary driver of the visa backlog. And again, this year, as in the past, there's bipartisan support in the Senate for this measure, and it's actually has co-sponsors, both Democrat and Republican. So that does seem promising. I mean, normally when you have a bill with bipartisan support out of the gates like that, the kind of like process is actually very hopeful, right? In terms of something will come out of this. However, thus far there hasn't been that much movement. So just so people understand what we're talking about exactly, because there's a lot of misinformation out there, and I think sometimes people are trying to take advantage of the lack of information among folks in order to just try to sort of hype them up or manipulate them. So I
Mm-hmm.
just want to kind of make sure that everybody understands what we're talking about here. So for individuals, particularly from India and China, there is a very long wait time in order for them to acquire a green card through employer sponsorship, right? So they could be sponsored in categories such as EB3, which is a specialized skill category, usually somebody with a bachelor's degree, or EB2, which is someone who is having a master's degree or a bachelor's degree combined with at least 5 years of professional experience. And what normally happens is that an individual, maybe they're in the U.S. on an F1 student visa, or they may be recruited directly from overseas and enter the United States on an H-1B, which is a temporary worker visa. And while they're on that temporary worker visa, they will be sponsored by an organization, right? They'll be sponsored by their company. And that company, so they're working on an H-1B for this particular company, right? That's a temporary worker visa. It requires that one be paid a prevailing wage, so their earnings are high relative to other U.S. citizen workers and their company. So it's not like the companies are somehow bringing in a foreign worker in order to save money. I mean, they're definitely just have this specialized skills that the companies need in order to thrive. And what unfortunately a lot of times the companies do take advantage of folks who are in an H-1B situation, because they stay on an H-1B for 3 years, for example, and then they have to renew it. And after they renew for another 3 years, they cannot extend past the second renewal period unless they have an approved immigration petition. So they have to have an approved I-140 in order to extend their H-1B temporary visa a third time, essentially, right? Now, a lot of folks new to this are probably wondering, well, if they have an approved immigration visa, why would they need to extend their non-immigrant temporary worker visa, right?
Yeah, I was gonna ask that too.
The reason why they need to extend their temporary non-immigrant visa is because the permanent immigration visa is not available. It's only going to be available according to specific priority dates, right? So those priority dates, according to when the person was originally sponsored by their employer, determines that whether or not one is able to file for a green card, right? So this is the basics, kind of like H-1B, I-140, 101. Then what happens often is that so the person is finally sponsored, right? So they're finally sponsored by the employer 5 years after they started, probably, and they get a specific priority date, right? So if you're from any country besides, for the most part, besides India and China, you're within a relatively safe situation, and even in an EB3 or EB2, you're going to get a green card at some point within. Right now it's backlogged a little bit, but it's not too bad. It's like a year or so. With folks from India in particular, the backlog has now reached to the point where it's, for one to receive a green card today, they would have to have been sponsored by their employer prior to 2012.
Wow, which is more than a decade. Yeah.
More than a decade, but it's not a decade. Like, there are so many people sponsored from between 2012 and 2023 that it is impossible who is sponsored today, who is born in India, to foresee a time when this date, 2023, would eventually become current in an EB2 or EB3 scenario. Because
Okay.
not only is it a 10-year or 11-year backlog that we see, but within those 11 years, you have a mass wave of highly skilled workers from India. So all of those people who've already been sponsored by their companies would have to get their turn in line before you get your turn if you're sponsored
Yeah.
today. So it's essentially, actually, I would say a lifetime wait. It's not a 10-year wait.
Oh,
for
yeah.
them to get through 800,000 or plus Indian nationals, it's not going to happen unless there's a change in the law. And that is what is being attempted. And that is what everybody is hoping for. However, I think that we have to also be realistic, right? So when we look at the actual congressional effort here, right? What that effort is about. So the reason why that Indian national has to wait an entire lifetime in order to acquire a green card is because they have specific country quotas, meaning only 7.5% of all available visas could be granted to one specific country as a general matter within each category. So can you imagine as much high-skilled people from India or from China that are coming into the United States and seeking green cards? 7.5% go to India, and that same percentage goes to Denmark, where nobody's immigrating to the U.S. from Denmark or from some other country. So to a lot of people, the system does not make any sense. And I concur with that view. I think the system does not make any sense at all. At the same time, there is political pressure, and I would argue possible efforts by powerful corporate interests to prevent progress that would sort of enable folks, particularly from India, to acquire a faster route, because I think a lot of the corporations and various lobbying groups, and probably even the attorneys lobbying groups, if I'm going to be honest, I'm not a part of any of those organizations, but I do think that they play a role, and their interests do not necessarily align with the interests of those who are seeking to immigrate and live a better life and have their situation taken care of. So that's a very, very serious issue. So what has happened, I guess, over the past several years, as I was mentioning, is that there have been efforts that various folks have made. So right now there is a Senate bill that is it's been introduced by Senator Kramer of South Dakota, I think, Susan Collins of Maine. She's a sort of moderate Republican, and Hickenlooper of Colorado. And they are seeking to abolish these country quotas. So they want to amend the Immigration Nationality Act to eliminate the per country numerical limitation for employment-based immigrants, to increase the per country numerical limitation for family-sponsored immigrants, and for other purposes. Now, that I think is going to actually be a poison pill.
Why do you think so? Okay.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, you say, I was just going to ask, why do you think so?
Well, unfortunately, for folks who are seeking or hoping for some legislative change, the Senate is only one part of the story. There's still the House of Representatives. And the Speaker of the House of Representatives is an extreme right-wing figure out of, kind of like the Trump mold. He's a Louisiana representative, Michael Johnson, and he, I don't think, would be willing to pass any kind of, like immigration measure that would enhance the ability of people to enter the U.S. and remain permanently, particularly in an election year. I think if there's any hope for legislation, it would probably be the following legislative session, which would be the next year, because that will be after the political season of the presidential elections. So even if this is able to pass in the Senate, and that would be huge news if it did pass in the Senate, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
It's not going to actually become a law, in my view, because I don't see any way that this could pass the House of Representatives. Because real quick, the reason why is that the Democrats are going to want to keep the language regarding increasing numerical limitations for family-sponsored immigrants, and the Republicans are there's just going to be differences on the family-based side. The Democrats are not going to agree to increase limits on family-based immigration, right?
So basically what's going to happen is, like, if ever it does happen, which you feel it's not going to happen, right? They're just going to take away from the family, right? They're not going to add more. They're just going to take from one part.
They're going to take, well, actually, no, what they're talking about beyond just taking from the family-based immigration side is that everybody would be on an even playing field. So, for example, if right now someone is from, Argentina or Bolivia or, South America, and they are doing an EB-2 sponsored route through, the immigration process, today they have a pretty direct opportunity to apply for a green card. If this country quota situation goes away, then the backlog is going to shift. It's no longer going to be an India backlog. It's going to be a global backlog.
Yeah.
Because they're not talking about increasing the numbers of visas.
The cap, yeah.
Yeah. So the every visa is used regardless. So
Mhm.
the same number of people are going to be on the backlog. It doesn't resolve a backlog issue. It just changes the composition of who is on the backlog. So ultimately, I am somewhat skeptical that this is going to pass.
Mhm.
And I would say, even if it did pass, I don't know how much it's going to actually solve. It's not going to be like the uh, permanent fix to solve the problem. I think that it would do some people some good,
Yeah.
but it would also do other people harm.
Harm.
And
Yeah.
ultimately, I think that people's hopes are so high in the Eagle Act legislation that it's going to end up being a bit of a disappointment, unfortunately. And that's why I think, every year I've seen this for the almost the past decade, and I always tell people, whatever happens in Washington, if it's good, then awesome, that's great. If not, which is the most likely situation, then you should have taken matters into your own hands. And that's really what matters the most, is that right now there is an opportunity to develop or to advance one's own case through a EB1A self petition if you're in that class of professionals who can sort of make that argument and case. Then I certainly think that it's a much better and higher probability to benefit you and help your own situation, that you put your trust and attention into what you have within your control, right? So
Mhm.
you could control your own situation. Therefore, you ought to take that into account and try to find a pathway towards EB1A. I've talked a lot about the different pathways, particularly for business and technology related contributors. And I think that in a time where we're starting to see a lot of layoffs and
Mhm.
economic uncertainty, and even like hyper nationalistic sort of narratives that are taking
Mhm.
place within institutions, you really, I think, need to secure your own future. And if you want to have a future in the United States, then EB1A is a great option. I mean, I think I've worked with people who um, have gone to 10, 15 different attorneys, have been laughed at and told that they have absolutely no chance, and we're able to make it happen time and
Mhm.
time again. We're able to make it happen. So there's so many examples and stories of successful cases that, it's just again, it's just something that is humbling, but at the same time, it actually is very rewarding that we're able to change people's lives in that manner. So we are seeing lots of cases that are approved, at I would say, record numbers right now, more than even in the past. I mean, I thought actually during the Trump administration, I didn't think things were that unfair
Mhm.
from an EB1A perspective or self petition perspective, but
Mhm.
now it's extremely favorable. I mean, there's no doubt about it. Like, especially STEM related professionals,
Mhm.
you look, it's not like some people have this mentality that an EB1A is just going to happen by itself, or, okay, I hired Attorney Sharif, that means I'm going to be approved. Like, no, you still have to do the work. You still have to have evidence. You have to develop
Yeah.
a narrative. But I think that taking the approach that is being sort of talked about by some of these, I mean, there's some ridiculous things out there. That's why we're doing the Mythbusters. So I think you saw that.
Mhm.
Um, I don't know if you maybe we didn't do it yet, but there's has to be an understanding that if you are paying money, like if
Mhm.
you go pay a couple $1,000s for somebody as, smart and talented as Mary to go write an article about me in a newspaper and put a big picture of me, right?
Mhm.
In that thing. And that somehow that's going to get you EB1A. and that this is a paid for marketing. Like, do you think the adjudicators are that stupid that
Mm-hmm.
they're going to
Yeah.
give you a green card because you went and paid $2,000 to a PR firm? Like,
Yeah.
that's not how this works. So if you think that you are going to get an EB1A because you're paying $2,000 to a PR firm, or because you're doing a Globee or a Stevie or a whatever fake
Whatever
award that you're
awards.
paying money for,
Mm-hmm.
you're out of your mind. You're out of your mind. There is no, like, hack, whatever. Like, I get it. I know what it's like. Like, I've been around people from India my whole life. I've worked with them. I've been around them. I know the culture. I know the feelings that we have and everything. And like, you can't just like, oh, I'll find a way to do it, and it's not going to work. It's not. It has to be real. It has to be authentic. It has to be truthful. It has to be built upon solid foundation. And if
Makes
you go
sense.
that route, you will be successful. If you go this, sort of shortcut thing that, I mean, oh, I saw it on a forum. Like, you don't think that those PR firms know how to write a fake hypothetical on a forum so that make you think that it's going to be successful?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah. It's one of
don't
their
be,
guys there.
like, come on, guys. So
I
we
mean,
could be a lot smarter. I wish people can focus on the best advice I could give somebody if they're really trying to get a green card is focus on what you've spent 95% of your career doing.
okay.
So that thing that you've invested all of your time, your brains, your energy, your thoughts, your power, everything that you've invested in that's what your case needs to be about. Your case is not going to be about some fake interview that's on paid PR advertisement with your, picture in a suit that's half the page. All right. It's not going to work. Promise you it's not going to work. All right.
Mhm.
So, anyway, other news.
Oh, and then Sharif, I just have like one client asking, like since you mentioned like circumventing. I mean, USCIS will see if you just just did that PR just for the purpose of getting a green card. So the question is, since you mentioned a while ago about country quotas, what if I was born in India but I have citizenships in Canada and Pakistan?
Mhm. Yeah.
Will
So the country quota, it's called the chargeability rule. So
Mhm.
chargeability is the country that you are counted toward, and
Mhm.
it is determined by country of birth. It's not based on
Oh,
country
okay.
of citizenship.
So even if like he's no longer, I mean, like an Indian citizen, that's
You're
still
still
his.
It's still based on your country of birth, regardless.
Okay, so I
Yeah,
think that leads us back to just like taking matters into your own hands, right? Even if
absolutely. Now, here's a thing. There's something called cross chargeability. So cross
uh-huh.
chargeability means that if one is like, you could be born in India
Mm-hmm.
or and be on a backlog situation. However, if your spouse is
Okay.
born in Canada, right,
Okay.
or Europe or any other country, basically, then you can immigrate based on their priority date. So your I-140 priority date could be used with the spouse's country chargeability.
Okay.
So, for example, if you have an Indian national who has an I-140 EB2, so
Okay.
he's having to wait until 2000, it has to be before 2012 in order to be current.
Mm-hmm.
So that person would not be eligible to, file for a green card. However, if they were married
Mm-hmm.
to a, I don't want to upset people. Who did the
Mm-hmm.
Indian marry? They married an Italian. Okay, he found an Italian girl, and so she is. Her chargeability is based on Italy,
Really.
and then it's essentially such that the I-140 will be. I'm sorry, the I-45 or the consular processing process would be determined according to the spouse's country. So that chargeability would go to Italy for the couple
Even if it's a husband, the Indian husband who has
who
approved
has the I-140.
I-140.
Yep, exactly.
Ooh, okay, so that's
Yeah,
it.
so
That's
that's
interesting.
cross
Something that
chargeability. Yeah.
you wouldn't know if you didn't speak with Attorney Sharif, right?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, some people will just will just despair, right, most of the time. That and they, and then like we have one last client here. Well, Attorney Sharif is not a It's not a fortune teller, but still they want to know, like, when do you think the backlogs are going to ease, Attorney Sharif?
Well, why don't we take a look at the actual State Department bulletin?
Oh yeah, it just came out yesterday or today.
It just came out and it's fresh. We need to understand what's going on here in order that we can kind of give folks the options and the understanding of what is going on. So I cannot find my browser that has that.
So while
So
Attorney Sharif is trying to look for that, I hope that if you guys tuned in our past channels, I mean, like, I think the one of the best takeaways some of our clients learned, I think in our last live sessions, was that you have to always look, right? If it's the filing dates or the final action charts. I mean, that's one of the important things, because some people just look at it and they just despair, without determining if USCIS will use the final action dates or the filing dates. So that's one other important thing.
absolutely, and that's a great point, Mary. And in addition to that, right now, so the visa bulletin just came out for 2024, and there is some really, I think, positive stuff for those of you interested in EB1. And however, we do not yet have the USCIS data to determine whether they're going to use the final action date or filing date, although all signs are that they'll continue to use filing date. So if we look at the dates for employment-based preference classes, right here. So we see the final action date. Now, final action date pertains to the date one would be issued a visa if they are processing their immigration at a U.S. consulate abroad. So first category, all countries. We have current, and the India date has moved from July 2017, and it's now September 1st, 2020. So
Oh, okay.
that's a great jump. And we are seeing, and we predicted this last month, that essentially it's going to ease up, and it's going to be an improvement for January. So that's good news on the EB1 front for India. Not so good news on the EB2. I mean, it's a mess. It's a disaster. Honestly, there's nothing more I can tell you than it's a disaster. Basically, if you're on EB2 or EB3, I think that and you want to get a green card, you need to call us and have us do a consultation, have us go through your information and try to find a pathway for you. Don't listen to what your friends say. Don't listen to the naysayers. Don't listen to the haters. Even if other attorneys have told you no, or you think you don't have publications or membership or whatever, just at least let us take a look at your profile and make a determination as to, I mean, we'll give it to you straight. Like, we're not going to beat around the bush. We'll just tell you what it is. And the filing dates, which I'm hopeful that these will become the adjustment of status dates. Again, has not yet been determined yet. For India is January 1st, 2021. China, January 1st, 23. All other countries current for EB1. For EB2, you have advancement. Finally, you have advancement for EB2 to February 15, 23. That's great news for those who are, beneficiaries of EB2 from other countries besides India, China, because it was stuck at December 1st, 22 for a very, very long time. So now it's moved up to February 15, 23. We're very happy to see that. I mean, relatively happy, I suppose. So that's sort of where we are. And with regard to, India, first, second, third category, again, it's a disaster. So there's nothing there. I'll just check again no, still nothing. So we're looking here to determine, this would confirm the actual filing, the adjustment of status dates that USCIS will use. They have not yet issued January, even though the State Department bulletin has come out. So if you look here, December 23 adjustment of status dates, were here. So we were at July 2019 for India. Now we're at 21. For second category EB2, we're
Mm-hmm.
now February 15, 23, before we were January 1st, 23. So
Yeah,
that
let's see some
advanced a
movement.
little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So there are folks, yeah, I mean, just seeing some movement there is a little bit encouraging.
Yeah.
So this again is December, but we were looking at the updated information for the January chart, and that does look really good. So so that's a situation there. And so somebody asked, like, where is it going from here? What's the prediction? Look, I think we'll have 1 or 2 more months of positive movement. Then it's going to get very, very ugly. So towards the
What
end of
makes
the fiscal year, it's going to get really ugly. But don't worry, because it resets again in October. So, like, August, September is going to look bad. Like, even EB1 is going to look bad because they're going to try to utilize all of the available visas that have been allocated within the first 10 months of the fiscal year. So the fiscal year starts in October, right?
okay.
And by August, I think you're going to be basically using all of the available visas. And then September, August, September probably are going to be dramatically backlogged. And it's going to look like, oh my God, like even now, EB1 is 10 years backlog. But really, it's not. It's going to advance back to where we are right now in October, or even better. So that's the situation. It's going to get a little bit better, then it's going to get a lot worse, and then it's going to get a lot better.
Yes, that's why we congratulate many of our clients who, instead of choosing to look at the negative, right? I know this can get, all like harrowing, right? But at the same time, many of our clients, they try to focus, right? They just try to make use of whatever they can build, how they can enhance, right, their cases, of course, with the help of Attorney Sharif, Silmi. And so we encourage everybody first, don't, like what Attorney Sharif mentioned, like don't listen to the haters, the naysayers, right? You gotta do your own research, and of course always good to cap that with proper legal advice, right? Like what we're learning from Attorney Sharif, Silmi, and like what I shared, like stressing will not really help you, obtain an I-140 approval or even build your case. Like what some of our clients, I'm very happy to be working with them. Many of them know that like today is just an investment, right? While they wait, of course we're honest, right? We can't do much about the dates, but we can definitely do a lot, right, when it comes to building your cases. And with that, of course, we have Attorney Sharif and the rest of Silmi Law to help you. So anything else you'd like to share, Attorney Sharif?
No, that's it. Thank you so much again, Mary. And I hope everybody is having a wonderful December, and we'll have great holiday break now. And if we don't see you, Happy New Year. And, talk to you guys soon.
Yes. Thank you so much, everybody. And we'll see you in our next sessions. Bye.
Bye-bye.